In 2018, I researched what engagement the youth of the Isle of Man have with politics and politicians.
As Chief Minister, I've offered all secondary schools the chance that if they want, I'm happy to go and give a chat with sixth formers.
I just think the other people that are not particularly interested in politics need a bit of a nudge.
Know the name of your MHKs?
Drew and Watterson.
Yeah, and there'll be another one.
It's only when I took part in Junior Tinwald in the sixth form that really sort of sparked something within me to sort of get more
involved.
We've
been in discussions with Mr Speaker and Mr President about how we can actually increase that collaboration.
Fast forward to 2019, and one of the biggest personalities in the global climate change discussion is a 16-year-old.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Here on the Isle of Man, some students have been quick to agree with Greta Thunberg.
We're going up scared. I don't know what's going to happen to my kids.
How representative is the Student Climate Network? Are the politicians listening to younger members of the electorate? I'm William King, and this is Youth and the Environment. There's a group on the Isle of Man called the Student Climate Network, and their leader is Archibald Elliott. Archie, tell me, what is the Isle of Man Student Climate Network?
The Isle of Man Student Climate Network is a student body that aims to give the youth a voice on climate change.
And how many members are there within this network?
Well, I'd say at the moment we have a good group of like 50 or so we're in contact with, and through obviously our Instagram and Facebook, we probably have an outward reach of maybe 500 to 500 plus.
So when you say 50, you mean 50, like sort of... Do you hold meetings?
We do try to hold meetings, and we'll be having one obviously in the next few months to kind of reorganise our structure, and we'll probably be releasing our membership forms to kind of get more students involved, as it's really useful to hear others' views.
So what is the main view of the Isle of Man Student Climate Network?
Well, we think that the current government is not ambitious enough in combating climate change. We feel it's a good step that they have obviously unanimously passed the current report, though we don't feel it's ambitious enough in order to secure the future for not just our generation but future generations.
Why do you say it's not ambitious enough?
They've still committed to a 2050 target, and we're seeing many countries such as Finland, and I will mention the dreaded Jersey, which have now set plans of how to reach their carbon neutrality. Finland's at 2035. It's a bigger country than ours with more people in. And then UPM has committed to a 2035 carbon neutrality.
Do they not have more resources to reach the carbon neutrality if they're a larger country?
I'd say our GDP for the Isle of Man is higher on average per capita than we have, let's say, in the UK and other nations. And with that, we are a smaller nation, so it should be easier for us to reach carbon neutrality because there's less to do, there's less houses to retrofit, there's less energy to provide, and there's less people.
So when do you think the target for net carbon neutrality should have been?
Well, we think that the target for net carbon neutrality should be 2035. That's always been our aim from the start, and we have demanded that through our strikes.
Geoffrey is the Environment Minister. What does he make of the Student Climate Network?
I think it's great to see that young people are involved, and this is politics, as it were, in terms of their involvement. Very difficult, I find, to get young people to engage. Climate change, the environment, seems to be a subject that they are interested in. It's their future, it's our future, everyone's future, but particularly young people's future, so I'm glad to see them engaged.
So have you been taking on board their views as well as other people's in terms of the consultation and outreach projects?
We have indeed, and I've had one-to-one meeting with the group, as have other people in government, and the department, Professor Curran, has met them as far as I'm aware, and yes, we've tried to look at their ideas, their aspirations going forward, and I think, or I hope, that the action plan has gone some way towards assuring them that we are taking things seriously.
Mr. Boot, Archie Elliott is saying that your plan is still not ambitious enough.
Well, I think in government we have to be responsible for the whole nation, as it were, in terms of the economics of climate change and the practicalities. And bringing in Professor Curran, who is well versed in these matters and has produced a lot of reports and a lot of expertise, and we also brought in a third-party expertise while the report was being prepared. Their best advice was 2050, and Archie refers there to Finland. I'm not familiar with Finland because I haven't looked at them in detail. Jersey has set a target in parliamentary terms, but they are working on how they're going to achieve that. But one big advantage they have over the Isle of Man is that they import nuclear generated electricity, so they're starting from a different standpoint to us. We looked at what they've been doing in the UK. Scotland has gone for a slightly more ambitious figure, but they already have an advantage in as much that they have a lot of hydro, wind and solar and other things that we don't necessarily have at this particular juncture. And we're very reliant on our gas turbine power station, which cost us an awful lot of money and was, when it was installed, one of the cleanest forms of electricity.
We'll return to the Curran report in a bit. But first, let's take a trip up to Ramsey, where Sarah Hendy spoke to Annette Baker and asked her if she'd seen such a movement like young people's response to climate change during her 36 years of teaching.
To be quite honest, no. It's quite extraordinary, the passion and conviction and interest that this whole area has brought out of young people. And I think the reason is they can see it's their future that's at risk and at stake here. They can see with their own eyes the dangers of what is happening to our climate, to our planet, to our environment, to our island, and they want to do something about it.
There are many people who might say that young people have been hoodwinked, essentially, that this is propaganda, there are lots of conspiracy theories around. Part of your role is to safeguard young people. Do you feel that there's any threat to young people in getting caught up in and whipped up into a sort of climate frenzy?
I believe very strongly as an educationalist that you've got to provide people with the information to make informed decisions. That's our job as educators. So we facilitate the students' expansion of knowledge. We share the information with them, we show them the evidence, and we ask them to make their own minds up. I think it's a huge insult to young people throughout the world, really, if you think they're not capable of making their own minds up about this. We make them very cognizant to the fact that people will try and manipulate them, potentially subconsciously, including teachers, because they're very impressionable when they come to us, and we have to tell them, and I'm at pains to do this whenever I speak to them, that they have to put everybody's views through a filter. But they're quite capable of doing that, and anybody who's worked with young people will tell you they'll come back at you with their own ideas and they'll challenge yours.
Mrs. Baker, the head teacher of Ramsey Grammar School there. As she said, there are some students on the island who are worried about the future and want to save the planet. This lot were at a protest outside Tynwald last May.
For them to take action against climate change.
What action would you like to see them introduce?
Cheaper bus fares and local food at supermarkets.
I mean, it's to support something that I believe in, so doing something to combat climate change.
It is currently being discussed and debated in the Tynwald Chamber. Do you feel that that's not enough from the politicians? Do you want to see more?
I don't think they're really taking an active enough stance or doing enough to kind of combat it.
So what measures would you like to see being introduced to show that the politicians are listening to you and they do actually treat this as a climate change emergency?
Maybe like kind of like an open forum or discussion where things that are put forward by the public can be answered by politicians. They can say what actions have been done by the government, what's taken place.
We should be enjoying our childhood, but we're not. We're trying to make a difference.
How is climate change affecting your childhood at the moment then?
Yeah, we're going up scared. We don't know what... We don't know... I don't know my children. I don't know what's going to happen to my kids. I don't know where it's going to be safe for me to grow up. I don't know if I'm going to be safe as growing up here, or I come from Thailand. My mum's from Thailand. I don't know if I should be growing up there, thinking about if I should move there, get housing in there.
There are, however, other students who are less aware of the difference the climate change could be making to our planet. Andy Wint takes the man in line to secondary schools.
Students of St Ninian's High School, what do you feel about the climate movement?
I went to the protest. Do you remember the protest that happened? And I supported it, but I don't really know much. Like, I do know like what's the causes and stuff, but I don't really have that much.
Does the school help in any way? Are there any information, any classes on it in the school? Or is it all word of mouth stuff?
No, yeah, word of mouth stuff.
We're live at Ramsey Grammar School today. Did you go on any of these Extinction Rebellion marches?
No. I'd rather just stay in school.
What do you think about Extinction Rebellion and what they do and what they propose?
I'm not going to lie, I don't know who they are or what they do. I kind of just stay away from that.
Are you carbon neutral?
Again, don't know what that means.
Have you ever cleaned a beach up?
Yes, I have.
Which one, when?
In Ramsey with school, 2 years, in fact, just probably about 4 years ago.
Does this whole Extinction Rebellion thing mean much to you?
No. I don't really know what it is either, to be honest.
Really?
No.
Do you think, because lots of people get very excited by the fact that, you know, the Greenland's going to melt and we're going to disappear underwater. Is that something that bothers you?
I've not looked into it that much, so I don't really have an opinion on it. So yeah.
Anybody here a Greta fan, by the way? Greta. No, Greta, we're Greteless over here. Crikey.
Andy Wint in Ramsey Grammar School and St Ninian's before that. Archie Elliott of the Student Climate Network, who attends Castle Rushen High School, wants better education on the topic of climate change.
Currently, we're not taught beyond the bare basics of the greenhouse effect and the effects that greenhouse gases have. And we'd definitely like to see the impacts of what climate change causes and what you can do to reduce it being introduced in the curriculum.
Do you think your school does enough, not only within the classroom, but beyond, in terms of tackling environmental emergencies?
I would say they have taken a step forwards after the plastic petition I put out might have been last February. We got a third of our school to sign this petition, and I did submit it to our headmaster, and they did take some positive steps. I don't feel it is ambitious enough. They reduced the amount of single-use plastic on the sandwich cartons and then started selling now reusable bottled canned water. Though
the bottles are still there.
The bottles are still there. So I think not more could be done in the education sector to push this forwards.
The current report did state that more climate education will be required in schools. Is your department going to work together with the education department to deliver something along these lines?
Well, it's up to the education department and schools generally to how they teach and the curriculum changes. From our perspective, we work with the Biosphere programme, and we're certainly doing a lot with Biosphere, with younger people, schools, reaching out, the scouting movement, guide movement, and various others. They're buying in with Biosphere badges. We are doing our bit in that respect. When it comes to schools, I think there is already, I understand, some climate change in the general teaching. I'm not specifically sure on that, but it may be that there is room for more education. But of course, young people are exposed to social media and general media, and they are probably aware, if not more aware, of what's going on than some adults.
On the topic of education, let's return to Annette Baker of Ramsey Grammar School, who told Sarah Hendy how the school is encouraging students to reduce their own contribution to climate change.
We are encouraging students, everybody in fact, to address the climate crisis in whatever form we think appropriate. I'm sure you remember that we had a delegation of our school councillors go and speak to the Chief Minister last year on the issue of plastic waste, which we addressed last summer. Touch wood, I think successfully. It's cost us, I have to say, as I said at the time it would, financially, not quite as much as we thought it would. What we basically did was get rid of the sale of plastic water bottles in the school. We've done that. We were supported by the Chief Minister at the time, who did organise the installation of water fountains, and we were very kindly sponsored by Conister Bank, who gave us the water flasks which students bring to school and fill their water bottles up with these water fountains. Although this is only a, pardon the pun, drop in the ocean to get rid of plastic water bottles, it put the whole issue of the environment on the agenda here at Ramsey Grammar School and increased the consciousness of students and staff towards it. And now we're looking at next steps. I just had a meeting with the school council this week, and we were discussing what to do next. I shared the current report with everybody in the school and asked the students to engage in it, and we discussed the 10 recommendations from the Council of Ministers, and the school council have been tasked with going to speak to their fellow students to find out what we should do next.
Education was a key part of Dr. Curran's recommendations. You are bound by a curriculum, but how much can that be played with? How much can you decide what needs to be covered in response to that report?
I think I've read the report specifically with regards to education. I think it's Appendix 9 goes into that in detail, and it recommends looking at the curriculum with an environment hat on, basically, and with a filter which identifies where we cover issues to do with climate change and environmental science and so on. And I think it is very timely for us to do that. I think all of us individually as head teachers and as leaders in schools can apply that filter to our curriculum and identify where we need to amend it and where we need to augment it. We do cover climate science in not just in science lessons, but in geography lessons, in global perspectives lessons. And if we audited, as we will, the curriculum, I think you'd find that that it's covered in most subjects. I would say there's huge potential in talking and engaging with young people in learning about all the issues faced by the environment, because young people will make the difference and will change things for the better if they're engaged in this debate, which they already are.
Do you expect any instruction to come from central government on that front?
I've already raised this with the Department of Education, and I know that Professor Curran has recommended even that through the education bill potentially it could be looked at to include recommendations to study climate science and environmental issues. We'll have to keep talking about that, but I've certainly flagged it up, and I've been in correspondence with the department over how we can take this forward.
Someone who goes out and educates people about climate change is Bill Dale of Beach Buddies. How do you think the children should be educated?
I mean, it's simple facts. I think we need to be more positive and not just come up with a negative message, because, you know, it would be very easy for people to get depressed, and the children in particular think that it was all a bit hopeless. So what we do, certainly, I mean, I talk about climate change as well. It's not just about beach cleaning and the environment and wildlife. We talk about everything. And they are very interested. The way to handle all these things is to say, listen, this is a problem, but look, there is a solution. And then that motivates them because they feel that they can make a difference. It's certainly worked with Beach Buddies, and I can't see any reason why that sort of approach will not work in the future. And let's face it, we live in a world of massive negativity where the system is basically broken. You only need to look at what's happening in the United States. The system is totally broken, and that applies everywhere. And we have got to make some changes before the planet disappears beneath our feet while we're all worried about money. It's absolutely crazy.
Last month, Tynwald unanimously voted to approve Professor James Curran's Climate Change Action Plan. We've already heard Archie Elliott from the Student Climate Network saying that it isn't ambitious enough. Bill Dale seems to have a similar view.
I was a bit disappointed that the date was pushed back to the latest one, because you know what it's like. We're going to fail to miss that as well. That's just the way that things work, certainly with governments. They never meet deadlines. So I think you'll have to accept that, you know, we're not going to meet even this date. I think we should be bolder, to be quite honest. There's lots of really good things in the current report. He seems like a very decent man. But I just think we should be bolder. We are a biosphere, the only nation in the world. I think we should be setting our standards higher than anybody else. So that's a personal opinion. I know these things aren't always achievable, but I know that the children feel that they've got a special place that they live in, and that why shouldn't we be setting a special standard? I'm not disappointed, but that's just me.
You seem to be
I would
saying
rather we were going for more.
You seem to be saying that you think that the report isn't ambitious enough, yet you're saying that you think it should have been more bold. Are those two not sort of contradictory things?
No, not at all. I mean, be bold, and let's. I think we should readdress the report in maybe 2 or 3 years' time. I mean, maybe even constantly, annually, just to see where we are, because we might make some very big steps very quickly, and then be able to say, well, listen, we can knock 5 years off this. I honestly believe that if you set a target, that we will not meet it. I will guarantee you, we will not meet it.
Why is that?
So therefore, be bold, because that's the nature of government. I mean, I've been very frustrated at times trying to deal with areas in government where you just cannot get things done because there is such a mountain of rules, regulations, and things and hoops to jump through. And anybody who speaks to you who works with government will tell you exactly that. So, and that won't come as a surprise. They won't meet the target. I'll bet you anything. They will not meet the target.
When do you think we will ever meet that target?
It's going to be difficult. I think the one optimistic thing I would say about this is that there are new things happening. There's new research going on. This is becoming a bit of a new science. And I think there will be major steps. I mean, the Isle of Man government has put a good chunk of money to one side. I think there will be new things coming out. And I think because there is an emergency on this, that there will be new inventions, new ideas as we go along. And the young people will lead that.
Bill Dale there, sharing Archie Elliott's view that the current report is not ambitious enough. In fact, the report sets out 2 pathways, one for higher and one for lower ambition. Mr. Boot explained this to me.
Both pathways end up with carbon net neutrality in 2050. One sets off at a higher pace, as it were. The other one sets off at a slower pace, but has to catch up at a later date.
So which do we choose?
I suspect there'll be a combination of the two. When we look at the practicalities of replacing our energy source with renewables, and as we see technology, and people talk about over-reliance on technology, but technology is moving very quickly. For instance, battery power, they're coming out with a new battery type fairly shortly, which is now fairly practical, which will extend lithium ion. The new batteries will be 5 times better, so that'll extend electric vehicle range, and obviously has a lot of other applications in energy storage.
So how do you measure the levels of carbon dioxide which are being emitted?
Well, there are international reporting standards, and we subscribe to those. Sadly, they work around 18 months to 2 years in arrears, because we have to report all our hydrocarbon use, etc., in a standard format, and then this is then number crunched and comes back to us and tells us where we are in terms of our net emissions.
So what happens if we don't meet the targets?
Well, that's one of the things we're working on at the moment. We're putting together a climate change bill, and that should be before Parliament by the end of this parliamentary term, or session, I should say, and that will lay out statutory targets and enabling legislation to make sure that we do hit those targets.
Mr. Boot there, saying enabling legislation will ensure that the Isle of Man meets climate targets of net carbon neutrality by 2050. Watch this space. There is a younger generation emerging on this island and around the world who feel the need to make a change. Is there an appetite for change island-wide? Worldwide? I don't know. That is for us, as a population, to decide. If you want to respond to anything from this programme, you can tweet me at William King IOM, or contact me through Manx Radio.
If you wanna make the